The drive out to the western edge of Texas always felt like stepping into another century, the highways growing lonelier with every passing mile. The gas stations more infrequent, the little towns you pass through clinging to life with a single diner, a faded laundromat, maybe a feed store with sun-bleached bags of seed leaning against the wall like forgotten children. The land itself seemed hollowed out, all scrub brush and parched fields, barbed wire stretched across endless fences where no cattle moved anymore. It was there in the middle of nowhere that I first heard about Ransom, a town not marked on any recent map of place, spoken of in half-joking whispers by locals who never stayed long in one conversation once its name was mentioned. They called it a ghost town, but not in the touristic sense, with gift shops and weathered signs, more like a place swallowed whole, left to rot in the sun, where no one was supposed to go after dark. I had been working a photography project at the time, chasing old Americana, abandoned motels and rusted-out cars, when an old ranch hand at a bar in Pecos told me about Ransom. He was a leathery man, eyes yellowed from too many years of whiskey and dust. And when I asked about strange places in the desert, he leaned in like he was giving away a secret. "Ransom," he muttered, voice nearly lost under the jukebox hum. "You don't want to go there. Folks left in a hurry. Back in the 70s. Something happened. No one agrees on what. Fires? Sickness? Some say the army was involved. All I know is the houses are still standing, but it don't feel empty. Feels like something's waiting." He wouldn't say more, and when I pressed him, he pushed back his chair and left his half-drunk beer on the counter. That was enough to hook me. 2 days later, armed with my camera and my restless curiosity, I drove out along a gravel road that split away from Highway 285. The sun was brutal overhead, the heat pressing against the windshield in shimmering waves, and the land stretched out in a kind of cruel sameness, mile after mile, with no signposts, no shade, nothing. After about 40 minutes, I saw it a cluster of rooftops in the distance, sagging under the weight of years, hidden until the last moment by the slope of the land. Ransom. The entrance was marked only by a leaning wooden sign with the town's name carved in letters almost illegible from weathering. Past it, the main street stretched out, a wide, dusty strip lined with storefronts whose windows were cracked or missing altogether, a grocery store with its sign half fallen, a gas station where the pumps were gutted, the metal twisted like melted bones. Houses stood behind them, weathered, clapboard walls, some with curtains still fluttering faintly in broken windows, as though someone had left only yesterday. The strangest part was the silence. Not the kind of quiet you get in the desert, with cicadas buzzing and wind moving through dry grass. No, this was an absence, as though even the insects had chosen not to stay. My own footsteps on the gravel felt too loud, like I was disturbing something. I parked the truck at the edge of the street and started walking with my camera. The first shots were ordinary enough: peeling paint, a child's tricycle rusting in the yard, an overturned shopping cart lying half buried in dirt. But the longer I stayed, the more I noticed small things that felt wrong. A half-burned cigarette resting in a tin ashtray on a porch rail, still intact despite decades of rain and wind. Refrigerator in one house that hummed faintly when I touched it, though there were no power lines running anymore. And the smell subtle at first, then stronger as I wandered deeper in a sour, metallic odor that reminded me of pennies left in a hot car. When the sun began to dip, I thought about heading back. The road was already blending into the horizon, and I had enough pictures. But then I saw a movement at the far end of the street, just a flicker, like someone slipping around a corner. My heart jumped. I told myself it was just an animal, maybe a stray dog. Still, I found myself following, camera ready. The movement had led toward the old church, a squat white building with its steeple leaning dangerously to one side. The front doors stood wide open, and the shadows inside were thick, swallowing the dim light. The air grew cooler as I stepped in. The pews were covered in dust, hymnals scattered across the floor, but it wasn't empty. It's carved into the wooden walls, gouged deep as though with a knife. were words repeated over and over. Leave, leave. They ran the length of the sanctuary up to the altar, where the wood was so scarred it barely stood. My breath caught in my throat, and I took a single picture, the flash stark against the darkness. For a moment, just after the light faded, I thought I saw shapes seated in the pews, like the aftermath of people slumped forward in silence. But when I blinked, the benches were empty. Outside, dusk had settled, and with it, the town seemed to change. Windows that had been blank and dead now glimmered faintly, as though lit from within. Curtains swayed where there was no wind. I heard the faintest sound of a radio, static mixed with the echo of a voice, though no music or words came clear. And then, from somewhere down the street, the distinct creak of footsteps on wooden boards. I froze. The sound didn't fade. It came closer, deliberate, heavy. I backed toward my truck, my pulse pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The street seemed longer than before, stretched like a nightmare. Behind me, another sound rose, a chorus of whispers, low and urgent, as though dozens of voices were speaking at once, just beneath hearing. They followed me, pressing in on all sides, impossible to pinpoint. When I reached the truck, I yanked the door open, climbed in, and jammed the keys into the ignition. The engine coughed, stuttered, refused to catch. The whispers grew louder, almost forming words, and in the rearview mirror I caught a glimpse of the church again. Its doorway was filled with shadows, thick and shifting, like a crowd pressed together, all watching. My stomach turned ice cold. The truck roared to life only when I stopped breathing, stopped moving altogether, hands gripping the wheel like I was trying to hold myself inside reality. Gravel spat out from under the tires as I tore down the road, not daring to look back until the shapes of the rooftops vanished in the dark. By the time I hit the highway again, the night had grown deep, the stars sharp above me. The desert wide and silent once more, but the smell lingered in the cab, that metallic, coppery scent. And when I reached for my camera on the passenger seat, I saw that the lens was cracked clean through. The photographs, once developed, showed the town as it was, but in every frame, faint behind the dust and shadows, were figures. Men, women, children, all with their faces turned toward the camera. Eyes black as holes, standing in doorways, at windows, in the pews of the church. I never went back to Ransom, but sometimes, driving lonely stretches of Texas highway, I catch that smell again, faint on the air. And I know the town is still there, waiting, its silence ready to swallow anyone foolish enough to stop.